it seems like a really good time to take a look back and see where we came from and where we're going. And I can't think of anybody who's better suited to do that than Lenore Edmond.
I heard Stu asking, but I didn't get to see. How many of you have been to a Maker Faire before? And how many of you, raise your hand. How many of you, this is your very first Maker Faire? Oh, yay, awesome. How many of you have actually presented at a Maker Faire before? I'm gonna see it, yeah, quite a few hands there. Okay, so my name is Lenore. I'm a co-founder at Evil Mad Scientist Laboratories, which is something that sort of came out of Maker Faire, which I think gives me the reason to be able to interview these awesome people here. And I want them to introduce themselves. I want you guys to tell us which was your first Maker Faire. I think we may hear some commonalities in that question. And what you showed at that first Maker Faire. So let's start with Sylvia.
Okay. So I'm Sylvia. I make Sylvia's Super Awesome Maker Show. My first Maker Faire was 2006. And I didn't present anything there, but it's what really inspired me to start my show and what made me continue going to the next couple of Maker Fairs.
And how old were you at that first Maker Faire?
I was, I think, 5 years old.
That's pretty hard to follow that one. Okay. My name is Jim Newton. I'm the founder of Tech Shop. And I had heard about the 2006 Maker Faire just a few weeks before it happened. I asked Dale if I could have a table because I had this idea for Tech Shop. Actually, I had the idea in 2005, but I was really ramping up to try to get it open. And at this time, it's hard to imagine nowadays, but there were no maker spaces yet. So I couldn't just look at a model for another maker space and figure it all out. We had to do it all dry. So I had, and when the slideshow starts, maybe you'll see it come up. We had out here on the grass, we had a paper sign and a card table, and we were just telling people about this idea that we wanted to do, just to see if people wanted this space. And we got an outstanding, just insane response from everybody, so that gave us the courage and kind of the plan to go forward. And we opened that October. We opened, and I'm wearing my build shirt from that year.
I'm Fritz, and along with Steven, one of the co-founders of EP Bird, known as the Coke and Mentos guys. Sadly, our first Maker Faire was 2007. We missed the first one, but we haven't missed any since then. So I think our first show was like in this little corner on the grass. It was just like, hey, let's do the show. And it's just grown from there. We wouldn't miss it for the world.
I'm Jerry Ellsworth, and I can't really remember if I made it to the first one or not, to tell you the truth. Make Magazine reached out to me when they first started their magazine. I had designed a toy, and they wanted to do an interview, how to hack this toy that I designed. And I kind of blew them off, like, what's this strange Make Magazine thing? And they did the article anyway. Someone put it in the magazine. And then shortly after that, I got all this people contacting me from it and saying, like, come to Maker Faire and show how to hack it. So it was either the first or second year I came here, and I was like hooked. I had kind of funny feelings about it, though, because it was such an eclectic mix of like people making birdhouses and then just little nuggets of super high-tech things. So anyway.
See if this is working. I'm Steven. I'm the other half of EP Bird, and I think Fritz covered most of our stories.
So I want to ask about some of your stories and experiences that you guys have had in Maker Faire. And Sylvia, I want to start with you. You have really grown up with Maker Faire. And you started the first Maker Faire that you actually, did something that was Maker related. Your second Maker Faire, you were filming at Maker Faire for your show, right? Yeah. So, and then you went on to where you were showing your own projects eventually at Maker Faire. So you have a lot of experience. Do you have any advice for first-time Maker Faire attendees or people who want to present at Maker Faire? Because you've done the whole gamut.
Yeah. So when you're first coming to Maker Faire, it's going to be kind of insane, especially these ones now because it's gotten so huge. I was really surprised how big it's gotten. When we first came here, you could see this giant tent in the half of the parking lot. I was like, okay, like I didn't know it would get this big. So you have to be ready for all the crowds and all the the crowds and stuff. You also have to keep you have to be really open-minded because there's a lot of things that you're going to be if you start doing them, you're going to get frustrated with them, and there's going to be a lot of things that seem kind of scary at first, but you really just have to respect them. You just have to have a really open mind and take in a lot of the really cool information. Presenters, you have to be ready for all those people. There's a lot of people, especially if you get a lot of people interested in it, because everybody's going to be talking to you and you're going to get kind of stressed out. And again, with the open-mindedness, take the criticism. You'll be able to improve your project. And yeah, that's pretty much it.
Great. So Fritz and Stephen, you guys have done pretty much the same thing at every Maker Faire, and you guys are known as the Diet Coke and Mentos guys. But I know you do a lot more than that. Is there something that you wish people knew you for or knew more about, projects other than geysers of soda?
I wish we weren't so far away. We have we did a mini Maker Faire for a few years in Lewiston, Auburn, in Maine, near where our lab is. And for that, we brought a bunch of stuff from our lab, just a lot of projects that were halfway done, that were in process, some that were further along than others. And all the ones that were safe for people to play with, we opened that up and let people play with that. And we would love to do that here. We just bringing it and staffing it. Like we can't our show takes so long to set up, do, and then clean up again. We can't be in two places at once, but I really wish we could bring that, the play area, we call it. Yeah. Here, because that would be really fun.
we have for our local mini Maker Fairs, we can bring all of our sticky note waterfalls and pendulum waves and all kinds of fun stuff. But we actually made the mistake a couple years into our Maker Faire experience of doing more than just our Coke and Mentos show, of doing some do-it-yourself geysers and having a little video booth, which was so much fun, but it meant that we were 24 hours a day working, and we never got to see anything, and so we cut back to make sure that we're here at Maker Faire. We need to come away inspired. We need at least a couple of hours to walk around and go, oh my God, that's so cool. This is the coolest thing ever. I want to build one when I go home. So we make sure that we don't do too much.
That's one of the pieces of advice that I often give makers, is that you have to take time for yourself at Maker Faire, that you need to, if you don't have someone at your booth to, make friends with the neighboring booths, learn about their projects, and you can trade off and that kind of thing, and make sure that you keep it at a small enough scale that you can handle it. I've done the too many things at Maker Faire before as well. Jerry, have you done that? You've brought so many different projects to Maker Faire. I wanted to know if was there any one in particular that you thought was more rewarding, or that you got really interesting responses from. So if you can tell a story about one of your favorite things to share at Maker Faire.
Well, going along the lines of being completely wore out, it's pretty easy for me to say that 2 years ago when I brought the Cast AR augmented reality glasses, that was the most rewarding for me, because Rick and I had been working on that for months. We're just believing that people would like it, but we didn't really know if people would like it. And so there was all this fear, leading up to Maker Faire, and all this work. We had to build 5 pairs of glasses, and were they going to break? And I mean, we probably gray hair and ulcers from that. And we showed up, we set up, and then the fire department came through and said we couldn't have our little corner set up like that, and it was all this drama. We were going to have to tear it down, and we found a solution for that. And then the doors opened, and a couple people trickled in, tried our experiences, ran out and grabbed their friends, brought more people, and then pretty soon a line started to form that was taking over an hour to get into the booth. And the fire marshal came back again, saying, like, you're blocking off all these roads. You've got to get these people under control. And yeah, that was definitely one of my favorite moments.
Dealing with the fire marshal.
Actually, the fire marshal came in and got a full demo. And then afterwards, like, this is really cool, and thanks for working with us. So I don't know how Maker Faire can afford the insurance around here, all the dangerous stuff. Wow.
I've heard. Jim, you were, just at the very first Maker Faire, as you mentioned, starting to build the community for Tech Shop, and now there are how many Tech Shops?
8 and 5 more in the near pipeline.
And many of the projects that come to Maker Faire have been built at Tech Shop. So I can't imagine how rewarding that must be for you. So do you have any favorite projects that you've seen that were made at Tech Shop that other people have?
Yeah, I mean, the standard ones, like, I mean, it's standard for me because I talk about them all the time, but like the Oru kayak, watching Anton and those guys, developing that idea and coming up with it and then having such success that they have. It's funny because we walk around, my wife is over there, we walk around and we'll say, oh, hey, that was done at Tech Shop. Oh, hey, that was done at Tech Shop. So I have no idea how many actually were, but I'd love to put little signs, have our members put signs up on their tables to say, this was made at Tech Shop.
I have another question for Fritz and Stephen. You have been at just about every Maker Faire, but you have also performed at other venues, big, well-known events and things. Is there something special or different about performing at Maker Faire for you?
Absolutely, absolutely. I think of all the places we've been, that Maker Faire is always our favorite place to be. I mean, it's where we say it in the show. It's where we find our kindred spirits. It's one thing to perform for an audience, in New York or Las Vegas or whatever, where it's like, yeah, okay, people are really into it. But there's something about Maker Faire where people get it. I mean, they're not just looking at it as like, oh, this is a spectacle to watch. It's like, no, they're trying it themselves. And that's a huge difference.
And part of what we try to do in every show is explain how the science works and explain how to do it yourself. And everywhere else, we're kind of evangelizing that. Here, it's like that's exactly what people want to hear from everybody. So it's great to be in, like, amongst our family, really.
I was a little bit worried when I set up this panel that I would just be getting all of my friends up on stage. So I was actually really grateful that I was able to get you guys up here, because I haven't...
We're enemies.
We're enemies, right. Because of all the people at Maker Faire, I'm surprised that we hadn't connected before. So knowing that, I want to hear from each of you, if possible. Are there any particular strong friendships that you've made that have developed into relationships that, have changed the course of something for you? Sylvia, let's start with you.
Yeah, actually, you guys. I worked with you guys with a watercolor bot, which was like a huge project for me. First thing that was really like an actual robot that I made that actually was successful, and I ran a Kickstarter with it, and it was a huge experience. I learned a lot from it, so that really strengthened our bond. And let me think. I've made a lot of friends here. The meta pictures, those are really cool because I get to meet them again after.
If anybody doesn't know what Sylvia's meta pictures are, she's taken pictures with friends that she's met at Maker Faire and then taken that picture to Maker Faire, and then we take another picture with that picture. How many are we at, you and I?
Maybe like five
or six, something like that.
Yeah, you can't even see the last one. It's so far back.
It's shrunk down in the picture so far.
We have done that, and we still need to take that too.
You guys will have to arrange that picture.
It's become something where it's like, we haven't seen Sylvia yet this year. We gotta make sure that get that picture taken.
Yeah,
she needs a new and bigger lab coat every time that she wears it.
Yeah.
It was about 3 years ago that you came to get the lab coat, right?
Yeah.
We had to get you a new lab coat.
Yeah, we forgot our lab coat one time, and we're just like, oh no, this isn't right. We have to have the lab coat. We can't do it without the lab coat. So we had to find
emergency lab coat.
But yeah, finding these friendships and stuff, and like meeting new people again is always like, you just get that warm feeling like, yeah, these people I can go to and like collaborate with and talk to about projects. It's really nice.
How about Jim?
Yeah, I think for me, just seeing our members and seeing people I know and, all the awesome makers. The other thing that's happened for us is we've actually gotten a couple of deals for new locations from meeting people and bringing them here to show them the culture. And, Ford was one of the first ones. By them coming here and seeing the Maker Faire experience, seeing the community here, that inspired them to help us open the tech shop in Detroit. And then there were Maker Fairs there for a while too, full blown.
Yeah, I mean, this is where certainly I've found a community of people who, everyone from Calgary to Oslo are makers I look forward to seeing every year, whether it's there or here. It's just been amazing friendships have grown up around this.
It's been great meeting so many like-minded folks, and it's spilled into my professional life as well. A few years ago, I helped set up the Valve hardware R&D department, which just reached out and we pulled in a ton of makers and stuck them right into this R&D department. And it had the same kind of Maker Faire feel. Like we'd stay there late at night and we'd make cool projects. And of course, when it came Maker Faire time, we was like, okay, we got to get our Maker Faire projects. And it just all built off of that excitement.
I grew up just up the road in the city in San Francisco, but we work in a tiny town called Buckfield in Maine, of about 2,000 people. So we make a lot of friends here at the different Maker Fairs we go to, but there's none where if we were based in San Francisco, I'm sure we'd have ongoing relationships. But what happens is every Maker Faire we go to, just walking down, I'm sure this is true of everyone who does this, you walk down the aisle on your way to your booth or to your setup, and it's like, oh, an old friend here, and oh, an old friend there. So in fact, for us, because we do a lot of Maker Fairs in different parts of the world, actually, the folks from Calgary we ran into the other day, and it was like seeing old friends, and we're still hunting down our friend Roger from Oslo, who we hear is here. Roger, you're here?
Roger,
we haven't seen him
Roger?
Yet. Roger Antonsen.
I would like to hear some of your favorite Maker Faire moments from Maker Fairs past. So, definitely from each of you. Sylvia, do you have a favorite Maker Faire moment?
Yeah, so the one I could distinctly remember from when I was really little, like 5 years old, was the electric giraffe. I don't know why. That was just the one thing that I remembered really well. I think I spent like most of my time by it when I was little, but that's just what I remember. And that's so like, you can't have Maker Faire without it. It's that one thing that you remember. Oh, electric giraffe, that's one of the things. I think the other thing was maybe like all the fire projects, all the fire things. Those are some things that I just can distinctly remember that are really cool.
At the very, very first Maker Faire, this is actually not at the fair, but at the setup for the fair. I had talked to Dale, told him this crazy idea that I had, and so he gave me a free table. But it was way back in the back corner of this far building down here that's part of the Jockey Club now, but it was way in the corner. So on setup day, I pull up in my Army truck that you maybe saw, that Army truck. I pulled in with my tables and the sign, the paper sign and all the stuff. And Dale was standing across the grass here, and he came running over and said, "Is this your truck?" And I'm driving it, so it's like, yeah. He said, "Oh, can we put it on display?" Because the first Maker Faire, if you guys remember, there was nothing here.
Did you see all that lawn?
There was
all the space.
It was sparse. It was like they were scrambling to get stuff on display so people would have something to look at. So I said, "Yeah, we can park my truck over here, but I'm way back in the hall, so I really need to keep an eye on it." He said, "Well, why don't we move your table out here onto the grass?" I was like, perfect. And I don't know, I really do owe Make a huge, debt for getting us bootstrapped and kind of started up because of the exposure that we got. If we had been back in the corner of the hall, I don't think we would have got that. So that's my, like, you know, and Dale was thrilled to have yet another thing for people to look at and climb around on and stuff.
I like the historical connection of making too, because big trucks and the car culture around making is part of our cultural history. So I think those kinds of big displays are great.
There are so many things to pick from, and it's I flash back to seeing at the Calgary Mini Maker Faire, seeing an astronaut riding a dinosaur. It's like, okay, I've not seen that before, and for sort of a quintessential maker moment. One time in New York, Stephen got quite sick with the flu, and
that's a quintessential maker moment.
Yes,
it was more than the flu, it turns out.
Yep, but it was suddenly we didn't have all of our equipment. I was there improvising. And so we didn't have any. If it was a
flu, I would have been there.
That's true, but he was in the hospital unexpectedly, and so we didn't have all of our plastic trays that the soda bottles sit in.
We had them. They were in my car, in my hotel garage, but the keys were with me in the hospital.
Yes, and so it was like, well, okay, it's Maker Faire, cardboard and duct tape. And about a half an hour later, we had all of the trays made out of cardboard and duct tape ready to do the show. But also for here at Bay Area, I would say the time that we did the Coke and Mentos video booth, where we had little kids in lab coats setting off their own geysers, was some of the most adorable things I've ever seen in my life. There was one kid in particular who was just like, he pulled the pin, dropped the Mentos into the bottle of Coke, ran for the horizon. Like didn't even see it. It was just like, boom, and I'm out of here. And then he looks back and he starts jumping up and down. He's just like, this is the coolest moment of my life. It was so much fun.
I want to cheat and do one from this year and then one from the past as well. I was just stunned yesterday. So, a young gentleman came up to me and he said, I'm a big fan of your work, and you know, I didn't know what I wanted to do when I went to college, but because of all of your projects, I'm studying engineering. I'm like, holy cow. How can it choked me up. But I think my favorite moment probably was Jim's booth for Tech Shop. There was a crew there teaching welding, and I'm pretty experienced at welding. And so I stood in line for the 20 minutes to get in there. I'm like, oh boy, it's gonna be fun. I get in there, and the guy very nicely tells me how to set up the machine and everything. And I'd been listening to the crackle of the welder go. I'm like, oh, that is set wrong. It is so set wrong. So I listen to it. I get the helmet on. He's telling me the safety stuff. I reach over and change the wire feed. He looks at me and he's like, no, we don't need to adjust. I'm like, no, just trust me. Run the most perfect bead. And he starts yelling out, we got a ringer here, folks. We got a ringer. And he's like, do you want to come teach? Like, anyway, that just kind of speaks to my mischievous side, but that was a lot of fun.
I think one of my favorite moments was 3 or 4 years ago, there was a gigantic, fantastic sculpture right out there with giant stones hanging from it that if we were allowed, we could rotate it by pulling these ropes. And I think whoever was in charge of safety said, for a while they were shutting it down, and then they let us open it up again. It wasn't ours, but it was the fair's and some amazing sculptor. But we wouldn't let people run it around in the circle, which was really half the amazing thing. But while it was shut down, I think this was a connection with this, and this was all during we're putting on shows and cleaning up and running around the fairgrounds. I went by enough, about 20 feet away from me was Dale, wearing a sandwich board that said needed, like structural engineer on both sides of his face, on both sides, front and back. I think it said structural engineer, but it was whatever they needed to get the okay from the safety guy to say, yes, we've okayed this with whatever authority. And sure enough, an hour later, the thing was working. And it was just like the best way to go, I know there's someone here, how do we find them? And he just wore a sandwich board. It was just awesome.
That was an awesome one. Yes, find me an engineer. And you mentioned with the duct tape and cardboard and find me an engineer, a lot of Maker Faire for many of us has been experiences of fixing something or solving a problem at Maker Faire, which I think is one of the most welcoming things about the event, is that it's okay to be making your Maker Faire project at Maker Faire. So I want to hear your moments, other than your cardboard and duct tape, moments of fixing something at Maker Faire. Sylvia, you got one?
I'm trying to think.
All right, well, we can skip to someone else. Jim, did you have any like that?
You're right. It's okay to be working on your thing here and whatever you're exhibiting. Not like robo games or battle bots, right? Where that's what people do a lot. They show up with their robot that's not quite done, but they'll get it done in time to fight, and it never quite happens. Here it's okay because people like watching you set up your stuff. We are always constantly in flux when we do our displays. We went from the little paper sign. The next year after that, we had the building like this next door. We had the entire building, and we had brought all of our equipment from Tech Shop, which had now been open, milling machines and lathes and welders and the plasma cutter and all this stuff, and all set up and all working. And we were giving little mini lessons to people, and talk about fighting with the fire marshal and the electrical guys. Hopefully they're not here because they'll shock me or something. Fighting with all these things and trying to get this to work. The whole Maker Faire is very seat of the pants, and it needs to be. And I think that's part of the charm. I think that's why people like it.
I have some distinct memories of trying to duct tape things together and keep them going during the fair. Like when we brought the glasses, we were trying to build all these glasses in remote Woodinville, Washington, and a storm blew through, the power went out. So my business partner went out and got a Honda generator, and I was soldering by candlelight and running the soldering iron off of the generator. And then we got here and we set up, and like, oh my God, I just don't know if I can take this stress. And we set up, and we're in the room with the Tesla coils. So every 30 minutes, the Tesla coils would go off, and it would like crash all the computers, and the glasses would go out, and it was a good acid test for the technology. And then, going to Maker Faire, it's not only fixing stuff. You have to, if you have like a mobile display, or sometimes your displays are painful. Like one year I made a bass guitar out of a Commodore 64, so I skated all weekend with this bass guitar playing with a little amplifier on my hip. And I kept falling down and tripping over things, and I had tons of batteries inside. They'd fall out and be like, oh, I'm okay, folks, hold on. Oh, it's not playing, crap. And then I'd like pull a screwdriver out and open it up and put all the batteries back in.
Did you think of one, Sylvia?
There wasn't that much like issues I can remember. Everything went pretty well. There would be those little bugs, like with the watercolor bot. You'd be like, oh, okay, we need to unmark this, put it in the corner, and like fix them. Just those little things that you need to fix. I don't think there's that many issues, but I think like he said that like people seeing that it can fail sometimes, they can kind of be like, okay, that, like these people, they're messing up. It's okay if I mess up. I will learn from what I'm doing. That's sort of like that thought process.
I like that about Maker Faire, that people get to see projects that are in all stages of readiness. That sometimes they're broken, and sometimes they're working fully, and sometimes they're somewhere in between, and all of those are acceptable here. And you can see that things are hard, but they can be done, and that I think is always rewarding. I want to know, so we talked, Jim, about the projects that you've seen that were made at Tech Shop. Have any of you seen projects at Maker Faire that you can see that they may have come from one that you brought in a previous year, like, that was probably inspired by you or a derivative of something that you did?
I have definitely seen some of that. Little kids that have been watching my videos for a while, I've seen their sort of things, like they have little puppets, or they have So like lots of illustrations showing, explaining things. You can just tell, like there's that little thing, like that they got it from my shows or some sort of thing. And sometimes I'm completely okay with that. That's really cool that they were inspired by some of the things that I've been doing.
I actually, quite a few years ago, I made a YouTube video. It was a really quick thing where I recorded audio onto an old floppy disk just to show you could record audio, and it made this kind of cool audio artifact, like this echoey sound as the head stepped back and forth. And the circuit benders and the music makers, were persistent and bugging me about, we need plans for this, we need plans, we've got to make this thing. And I'm like, I don't know, I just built the thing in 5 minutes and made a YouTube video. And I show up here one year and there's like a whole group of people with floppy disk drives playing music, and they'd like figured out how to do it and like bootstrap themselves knowing nothing about electronics, but they really wanted that sound. Made me feel really good.
How about you guys?
I don't think I've seen anything here. I mean, we do the same thing every year, and I don't think to my surprise, not much. But we encourage people to try and take the idea and run with it, but not that much here, I don't think. A lot of stuff online, obviously. There's a lot of documentos online.
We did have a similar experience of having a kid come up to us and say, like, I'm going off to school on a scholarship for engineering because I saw your video 6 years ago. It's like, what? It's way too crazy.
Those are such rewarding moments. Okay, I have a totally different topic. One of my favorite things about Maker Faire is shopping. This is a dirty secret. I hate shopping, but I love shopping at Maker Faire. So I want to know, do you guys go shopping at Maker Faire? And if you do, what kinds of things do you look for?
Yes, I have gone shopping at Maker Faire before. Honestly, just like same problem. I don't like standing and waiting and like looking for clothes or like other stuff. I'm just like, can we leave, please? But when I'm here, I'm like, oh, let's go over to there and there. Like there's this entire San Francisco Bazaar. Can we go over there, please? So I also love looking like in the Maker Shed. I love going in there. I haven't been there yet today, but definitely will. Looking at all the kits, it's just like all these like resources. It's like just opening up all these ideas, and I find it really interesting.
Yeah, I don't shop that much at the Maker Faire, but I let my wife shop, so she likes to go to the craft area and get cool earrings and different things.
Yeah, I'm a sucker for weird Japanese kits and all those things. And you're just like, oh, I got to build this. But I also I have I have the feeling that every Maker Faire I could come home, if I wasn't careful, several $1,000s the poorer. It's just like these big giant art pieces. I actually got one of Kristen Hord's light up pieces last year, and it's that I could get one of those every single year. It's amazing stuff. So it's definitely a weak spot for me.
I really enjoy watching makers go from, a kind of a glitchy prototype that they're showing 1 year, improvement, maker store, whole company around. It's like, I really dig that. And you see that over and over again.
well, there is that. I guess we did do that, and yeah, I get my whole wardrobe at Maker Faire. It's and I feel like there's a connection when you buy something here, that you met the person who made it and they showed you how they did it, and it's.
I can't be the only person. The only thing I look for here on a regular basis is materials. Like it was here I found Sugru, and here that I found Shape Lock. And I travel with Sugru now. It's like in my laptop bag, and I think I use Shape Lock once a month at home. So every time I get here, I head to the Maker Shed and look for what's the next. I either need to replenish that or what's the next thing. That's where I find that stuff, which is really useful.
Are there any other materials that each of you, or things that each of you bring to Maker Faire? I'm sorry to. You bring Sugru every time. Do you have a thing?
I bring that wherever not just to Maker Faire. I have it in my.
It's in your emergency kit.
It's in my toilet kit, actually.
I always bring the camera with me, like the camera. They have to make the videos, and I always like documenting the adventures and stuff. So the camera is always something that we bring. There was this, I think it was 1 year Maker Faire. My dad was being a little weird and left the camera on the back of the the car and drove off, and we were on the freeway. So that camera was gone that year, and we had to borrow other people's cameras. So the camera is just this thing that we always have with us whenever we go. So
that's an important tool for makers, whether you're at Maker Faire or not. It's a tool that a lot of people don't think about that is really crucial to this community. That's an interesting one.
I just wanted to say on the shopping thing that seeing Strawbees come along, because we saw them first in Oslo, and to see it, it's this brand new thing where they have this idea, and then to see it on Kickstarter, and then to see it here, and then to see it in the Maker Shed, like to see the arc of a product like that. And to have several thousand of them back at the EP Bird Laboratory, that to me is the kind of thing that you discover at Maker Faire that's so exciting.
I think everyone needs to travel with a hot glue gun. I've solved almost every problem I've ever had with that.
One of the things that I was curious about is whether there were things that at previous Maker Fairs that were particularly inspirational for you. So for instance, a story from our Maker Faire experience is that the very first Maker Faire we saw Bathsheba Grossman's work, and this is again part of the shopping thing. We bought one of her beautiful 3D printed sculptures. And so then for the next Maker Faire we made a 3D printer because we had to be able to have a visceral connection with that thing that we loved. So are there any particular things that you've seen at Maker Faire that were inspiring or possibly sent you in a project direction? Ooh. Yes.
Just to tag on Kristen Hord's stuff in the darkroom. I that night I just started scribbling designs for clocks and designs for fountains that were based on the inspiration from seeing what she's made, and so hopefully I've got pages and pages in my notebook that hopefully will someday become something real.
I'm trying to think of something, but actually, I feel like the entire experience of going to Maker Faire is like, it's so open and there's so many creative things, and like you see all these people, they're like working on stuff, they fail sometimes, or they actually have something working, and it says like, I want to make something like that. I want to make a project and even learn from it and all that sort of stuff. And I can't really pinpoint on anything at the moment, but it's just that whole experience is something that's inspiring to me.
Yeah, I think I agree with you. For me, it's more of a general recharging kind of experience. I'll be, my wife's gonna go crazy in the next couple of weeks because I'm gonna be, starting all kinds of new projects and things from things I've seen here, and ideas that I've gotten. I got an idea and wrote it down just before we came up on the stage. I'm meticulous about writing down ideas so I don't forget them. But for me, it's just getting overall inspired, and also the other part is knowing that there's a lot of other people out there, that having that support. Before Maker Faire was around, you didn't know there was all these other people around that were interested in making things. You felt really isolated and alone, at least I did. And to see, there's probably 150,000 people here this weekend, something like that. That's really inspiring to me.
It took me a second to think of the one that really inspired me, and it was kind of it's been kind of big in my my kind of amateur science life. One of the first Maker Fairs, there was a hall over here that was just full of just crap you could take apart, and there was a piece of an electron microscope in there. And I kept circling by it like, oh my God, I want an electron microscope, and here's a piece of one. And so at the end of the Maker Faire, I went to the folks that were organizing that. I'm like, can I have that, vacuum chamber? And so it's still darkening my garage today. This thing, I never did anything with it. I had these dreams of doing metal sputtering and metallization with it, and maybe getting it working. But eventually I got into doing semiconductors in my garage because of that like desire, and I actually got an electron microscope that works and a plasma etcher, and it kind of caused this huge like, engineering arc to happen.
So at this point, I think I'd like to open it up to questions from the audience. If you have questions for these amazing makers who've helped created what Maker Faire is today. I think the mics in the center are these. If you have questions, you can come up to the mics. It may not be on. You can go ahead and ask your question, and I'll rephrase it. What was the most surprising thing for you when you first went to Maker Faire?
Well, as the Maker Faires got larger and there was more people, I thought it was surprising. Well, I don't know. It was this sort of feeling like, oh, it's actually happening. These people, like just people that come in. Like they come in and like if you can remember them, they come in next year with things to show, and it's like that they're actually becoming inspired by this event, and I thought that was really interesting.
I think for me, the first Maker Faire I came to, I was really surprised at how many people late in life were discovering new skills. I saw people making birdhouses for the first time, and they were full-grown adults, and like, wow, it's interesting.
I think for me, it was just the collection. Everything sort of fits in this one family of, it's indescribable, except that it's here. It all fits here. And it was somehow any place that we could fit and just be, oh yeah, another one of those is a really cool place. And that's sort of how it works for us.
I think our second Maker Faire, I was surprised that we're sitting there, setting up for the show, and a couple of people walk up to the edge of the stage. And one of them starts saying to his friend, so now they've got 5 Mentos in each of those nozzles, and there's a pin holding it in place, and it uses a process called nucleation. It's like, and he's described, and clearly seen the show before, and is back for more, but now he's brought his friends. And it was like, okay, this is what Maker Faire is going to be like.
Yeah, I mentioned a little bit before about this, but I think for me the big surprise was just the precipitation of people that are interested in making things all showing up in one place at one time. I'd never, ever in my life experienced anything like that, and I think that's definitely my favorite part of every Maker Faire I go to.
For me as well, that we got to the very first Maker Faire and suddenly realized that there was a name for our tribe, that it was, they existed and there was a way to connect with them. And coming back to every Maker Faire, it has been clear that this is our community and our home, because back in 2006, the social media hadn't gotten to the point where it was easy to find like people. And when you suddenly put people in a physical place together, it really catalyzed something, and it's been an absolutely amazing journry. So do we have any more questions?
Yeah, it's easy to forget that there weren't even iPhones at the first Maker Faire.
That we all carry our connections in our pocket now. Did you have something? Any more favorite stories from Maker Fairs past?
Not a story so much, but I was thinking as you were just asking, looking back, I think one of the most important things about the fair and about the community for me is the respect that's given to all these strange creators. I mean, I'm looking at the things on the screen right now, and in any given neighborhood, that would just be, oh, that's the weirdo with the weird whatever. And here, it's really well respected, as it should be, and I think that's really important, and that's what it allows people to do more of it, to give it the respect that it's due.
Can you imagine if that was on your street, a couple houses down?
Right, exactly. Yeah.
You don't necessarily expect the Lego Jeep to be parked next door, because I wouldn't be too surprised now, but back then, yes.
Right, exactly. More truer now. I think
exactly.
It's given a level of respect.
So I have an experience from this Maker Faire that's along those lines, that I was given a handmade journal that's cross-stitched with Douglas Adams' little I can't remember what it's called, but the little green thing, Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. And the young girl who made it for me, her mom said, you know, where we live in Michigan, there aren't people like this. And when the kids come to Maker Faire, they get to see people like them and people with funny colored hair and experience that it's okay to be who they are and to like making the things that they like making.
And I can't. I'm excited to see, you know, what happens with kids who, like Sylvia, who grow up on this. I mean, who, you know, in a few years we will have people who don't know a world without Maker Faire. It will just be part of their DNA, and they'll just go like, "Oh, soldering, lockpicking, yeah, I do that. I've done that since I was 2."
I have a little shrine almost at home of stuff that fans have given me at Maker Faire, including pictures from Sylvia. It's some of my most cherished things because it's, you know, it's from their heart and they really appreciate what you're doing, and it's really touching.
More favorite moments or?
Well, I try to think, but I think someone has a question.
Oh, we have another question. Oh, great.
I do. Maker Faire now, you know, compared to some of the first images where there is room on the lawn, for example, is now like this civilization that sort of completely appears and seems to have been there forever. But so you all have been here for so many years of it. What are some of the points in which the things have changed from year to year to kind of evolve what this thing is that Maker Faire is at each of its manifestations?
So what are the points of change?
I'd probably think maybe around 2011, maybe, like when a lot of people started coming in, and I guess I don't really know how to describe it, but it's when people really started to, like a lot of people started coming in and showing things.
Just the
like,
sheer size and number
yeah.
of people at Maker Faire really skyrocketed in those years, and that way
That's around the time.
got dense.
There's some interesting phases of Maker Faire 3D printers and art cars, and it feels like there's some cyclical things.
I think there are. Like the first Maker Faire in 2006 was so open, and this year it's back to a little bit more open and easier to walk around. It's spread out, it's grown. There's still, you know, the hundreds of thousands of people, but it's opened up again, whereas it got really, really crowded and excited, and but it's changed again.
I think probably the biggest change that I've seen is that the percentage of non-makers is increasing, the ratio. There's more and more non-makers that come here, and by non-makers I mean people that are not actively engaged in being makers yet. And I think, as you know, like the first one, it was almost everybody there was like a pretty hardcore maker, either exhibiting. I think there were more exhibitors than attendees, but no,
Not quite.
not quite. But as it becomes more mainstream, you know, you get a lot more people coming that are curious about it and maybe want to engage. So I think it's, as the core makers, I think it's our responsibility to coax those people in and get them to realize that it is hard to make stuff, but it's doable, like you said.
One thing that I've seen at every Maker Faire is that there are opportunities to make things at every Maker Faire, and it's not just us showing our projects, but it's things that, so what have you made at Maker Faire? At Maker Faire New York last year, I made a rubber stamp.
Oh, that's cool. I thought that's actually kind of cool. I've made, let me think, just like a couple, like right before I went over here, I made the, there was this metal arts booth right, I think over there, and I thought it was cool. Those people were so enthusiastic and really wanted to teach you, and like seeing that positive energy was really like inspiring. You're like, yeah, I want to do this too. Like, thanks, this is awesome. So I liked that feeling throughout. Like every booth, almost every booth that you go to, there's like people that are like, they want to teach you, and you're like, yeah, I want to learn. This is cool.
I think it was I don't remember, I think it was the first Maker Faire. In the building across the grass over here, over on that, I don't know if you can get in that building. Is that part of the Maker Shed now over there?
Directly across
on
the
that
Maker
far
Shed,
end down there
I'm
by
not
the,
sure,
if you go in there, they had this big activity. They had this big metal, they had a big school bus that was painted with, or you could paint circuit traces with electronic, conductive ink, and then stick LEDs on it. And they were making these things called throwies that nobody had ever heard of before.
The GRL bus that you see in the slideshow occasionally here.
What's a throwy? Well, it's just a coin battery with a magnet on each side, or I guess one magnet, and an LED with the steel-based leads just stuck on. And I guess you could use tape and put a magnet on it. But what they were doing is they were making these throwies, and we were all making them. I was having actually a good time. It was such a stupid little thing, but I was having fun. But we were throwing them up in the girders, the steel rafters inside the building over there. And if you go in there, there's still like thousands of throwy magnets up in there. So, when the LEDs were on, it was like this constellation up there. It was really, really cool.
Yeah, I think for me the first time I saw Strawbees, I was just like, that was it for the next hour. I was just like sucked into taking little straws and making things.
Yesterday I spent about 10 minutes with a girl. She was about 6 years old, and she's doing zip tie art. And at great detail, she showed me exactly how to close zip ties and put them together to make little stars like this. It was great.
We're usually working most of the shows, but I think it was in Kansas City. I was in the hour or so that I was watching this woman do some knitting project. I'm not sure exactly what she was making. I don't remember, but she roped me in. She sat me down and taught me how to knit. I had like 6 minutes. Like, well, I only have 6 minutes. Sit down, I'll teach you. I was knitting. Well, I'm not a knitter yet, but.
But you learned to knit at Maker Faire in 6 minutes. That's like the quintessential Maker Faire moment. The Diet Coke and Mentos knitting. Did we have any more questions?
Yeah, real quick, I wanted to mention at 2:15, I'm going to be at the Little Bits booth. I'm going to be doing book signing for my newest book, the Arduino book, and I don't know if you guys wanted to come and talk and get a book, maybe that would be really cool. So just wanted to mention that.
And after this, we'll be outside and available to answer questions one-on-one. And as you know, almost all Maker Fairs are open, or almost all makers are open for questions, and really enjoy that and engaging with each of the attendees at Maker Faire. So do you have any things, last thoughts about having been doing this for 10 years and how this has changed your lives?
I can't wait for the 20-year reunion.
Exactly, exactly.
That would be crazy.
What is Maker Faire going to be like in another 10 years?
It's going to be huge.
I wonder what we'll be making, if it's still going to be zip tie art and rubber stamps.
I hope so.
Yes.
We'll have like this retro part in the back where it's like the old Maker Faire, and then all these people, like all the old projects, and people will be like,
we'll be like, yeah, back when we did Arduino, and now everything is, FPGA. And although you've been doing FPGA at Maker Faire for a long time, so that's pretty retro too. Well, I really want to thank all of you guys for making Maker Faire what it is, and for being part of this panel. It's been really great to become friends with you guys over the years, and I'm looking forward to many more Maker Fairs with you all. Yeah. All right.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.